Alright, hello YouTube and welcome back to another video tutorial for LightWave. This is Guardian from Capital Gear Gaming speaking, and I'm going to teach you guys a little bit about bullet dynamics. A friend of mine requested how to blow something up. Obviously he means an explosion. However, I'm not going to be covering the actual explosion part of it. I'm going to be covering the destruction of an object, because there's two different things. One requires bullet dynamics, which is what we're going to be going over, and the other requires hypervoxels, which we will go over on later. Hypervoxels are an entirely different thing altogether, and they take a while to teach altogether, so we're not going to be doing those. But here I've got an object, and it's just a little basic object that I've textured and I've put on. Now, you have to keep in mind that when you texture an object using this and simply going, whoops, do you want to envelope that? And simply going a planar texture or a cylindrical texture or a spherical texture or anything like that, if you do that, you have to keep in mind that if your object moves or adjusts, it will the texture itself will deform, and that's the disbenefit of having a planar texture or any type of normal texture. So what I used instead was a UV texture. You want to use a UV texture if you're blowing something up or moving something, and the reason why is because, let's say if I grab these points here and then move it, you'll notice that these textures do not deform. And these textures even barely deform. They deform a little bit because they have to, but they barely deform. And that's the benefit of having a UV texture. So make sure, if you're going to blow up something that's textured, make sure you have it a UV texture, because that's very important. Otherwise it will just look off. For example, if I were to, well, I don't know, let's just do a really quick example to try and get this out of the way so that it makes sense. If I grab this and then texture this, whoops, I think it's under default really. Is that not considered default? Here, let's call it default then. There we go. Okay, watch this. So if I move this, you'll notice that the texture itself moves. That's the disbenefit of texturing normally. Now if I had a UV map like I do with this cube, the texture stays where it is. It doesn't move, which is what you want when you want to blow something up, because otherwise the textures will they'll shift and it'll look weird while it's flying through the air. So what do I have here? I've got a cube. Now it's a full cube, the entire thing. It's not multiple cubes put together, because we're going to be doing a proper destruction. If you look up bullet dynamics and you look up tutorials for bullet dynamics, you'll find videos of people who have cubes all together. Like, imagine this was all one separate cube, and then the next bit would be all one separate cube, and they're all just they look like they're stuck together, but they're not. And that would work fine, but it doesn't look like it's been destroyed because there's no edges. It looks like it just kind of falls apart. Instead, what we're going to be doing is we're going to take this cube, we're going to fracture it, which then gives us our detail, and then we will explode it. And I'll show you guys how to do that. So I've got my cube. That's what the first thing that I have, and that's obviously the first thing that you need, the object that you want to destroy. And I've added some extra polygons because I want to make sure that when the pieces fracture, it'll have even more polygons, and the more polygons means that it's going to react with physics a lot better and a lot easier. Now the other thing I have in layer 2, as you can see here, is I've got a plane, a ground plane. Now this has a lot of polygons, because the more polygons you have on your ground plane, the less of a chance any pieces of your destroyed object will just kind of float through your object or through your ground plane, because sometimes they glitch through and they'll just kind of float through and they'll fall down. You don't want that, so create a detailed ground plane and make sure you give it some thickness as well. So we have our ground plane and we have our object, which is going to be destroyed, and I've already saved it and I've named it and I've set up its texture. As you can see here, I've given it let's just remove that. I've given it you know, its UV texture here, and I've given it its bump texture here and here. So it should be pretty much all set up and moderately nice looking. I haven't tested it, so I don't really know. And another thing, this isn't exactly required or specific, but bullet dynamics and a lot of dynamics in LightWave like it when you have the object centered to start out as. So if you press F2, you will center your cube directly into the center of the grid here, and that it just makes the dynamics a lot easier for the program to handle. So it's not, you know, you have to do it or anything like that. It's just, it makes it a bit easier. So I'm going to close this down and we're going to bring up layout so that we can actually set this up. Alright guys, welcome back to our little tutorial on exploding an object here. And this is our cube. It's currently in wireframe. I'm not too sure why. I normally keep it like that. And let's grab our camera, let's get a good angle. Now we should be seeing our ground plane. I'm not sure where that went. Should be around here somewhere. Did I not actually put my ground plane in? I might have not saved it, so if I didn't save it, I'll just quickly create it here. I'll show you how I created it, I guess. Not that it was difficult or anything. So we'll bring this open. Yeah, I guess I didn't save it. Sorry guys, I didn't mean to do that. Silly of me. I just basically created a large ground plane like that. Kept it in the middle. Brought it down a bit like that. Bring it down like that. Now what you want is you want your cube to be resting on the ground plane, like so. You don't want them overlapping, you want them resting. I didn't put on smoothing. Can't believe I forget to put on smoothing, I'm an idiot. And then I subdivide it a few times. I think that'll do, just so I can get that extra detail. And let's save it. And now I'll open up layout. Alright guys, welcome back to layout, and this time we actually have our ground plane with us here. It's a bit small. I guess I didn't really pay attention to how big it would be, but I think it'll work. It just means that because it's small, since this cube here is going to be exploding upward, pieces might fall off the edge. I can't believe I'm forgetting so many parts that I shouldn't be forgetting. Again, we have to leave layout and we have to go back to modeler because I forgot to fracture the object. So I'll show you guys how to fracture the object. So we're going to go into load object and we're going to bring our object back into here. And so here's our cube. You've got your object, whatever it is. It could be a cube, a person, doesn't matter. What you want to do is you want to fracture it. This works especially well when you're talking about, you know, walls, buildings, cubes like this, brick walls. For a human, it would be different. I'm not too sure exactly how you do it for a person. I guess fracture would work. So under multiply, we have fracture. It's right at the bottom at destroy. You have to make sure you're at least 11.0 for fracture, or higher, like 11.5 or 11.6. For this, I'm using 11.5, so it shouldn't be that much different. And make sure you have only your object on your layer, or you can select it like so, and just make sure you have the whole thing selected, or it's just the only thing that's on the layer. So we're going to click on fracture. Now it does this randomly, like completely randomly, so we can give it random seeds, so that'll just change how the fracture is randomized. We can create it in a new layer, which is what we want. You can also create it in a completely new object, which is you can have it if you want. It doesn't really matter. Now, parts to layers. What that does is it'll actually take every individual part and change it into a layer. You don't want that. Well, you might, but personally you don't. Not for me anyways. Not for this project. You can also explode it into parts so that when you have it in the other layer, it's already exploded into different various parts. We're also not going to be using that. If you want to, that's fine. You can use different algorithms for the random seed. So we have Voronoi and Matrix and halves. They're just different styles of doing it. You can use the points as like random connections between the random like between the random parts. You can use the background layer points or background layer polygons. So if you had points in the background layer, then you could use those to actually make it fracture only part of this object. Same with if you have polygons in the background. Cell count as how many parts are there going to be. So 100 isn't really that many, but because I'm recording and because something like this is pretty heavy on your CPU, I'm gonna go, you know, not too high. I might go something like 50, but if you go like 10, then it's gonna be like 10 large chunks. If you go like 1,000, then it's gonna be like 1,000 little pieces. So it depends on how much you want it to explode, basically. And so we can just, I don't know, let's generate random seed of 2. I guess doesn't really matter. We could stick it to 0, stick it to 0, and press OK, and it'll do this. And you might freak out because you're like, oh my god, look how many polygons that is. Look at it, what it's done. I'm freaking out because it's done all this and I don't know what this is. Leave it alone. It's done what it has to do. If you try moving it around, you'll notice it's kind of messed up. So just just leave it be. And what we have is our original is here. It's in the first layer. The breakable part is in the third layer, or the new layer. Now if we save it, we'll be able to use it properly. So now we're actually going to go into layout. Sorry it took me so long. Alright, finally we're in layout and we're actually supposed to be in layout. So we've got our two objects here, and it's hard to tell which one is which, but there is a way, obviously, and that's through remembering which one's which. Because they're both on top of each other right now. So what you have to do is you have to go to objects, and the third layer is the one that can explode. The first layer is the original. So we'll bring that down and we'll just forget about it. What we can do is we can go to properties of that object, and under render we can use object dissolve and just set that to 100%, and the camera will it's basically gone. It won't cast a shadow, it won't do anything, it's gone. So here's this, and this has been divvied up into, what was it, 50 parts? So it's got 50 little parts in it that will fall apart and basically just kind of collapse if we just let it collapse. So under setup, or no, under FX tools, we have bullet, dynamic body, sorry, collision body, forces, destroy, fracture basically, but I prefer doing it in modeler because then we have a bit more like we can really see what's going on. We have the layers, you know, it just seems right. We have flocking, which is slightly different, and then we have our particles. So what are these sort of different settings that we have? Well, everything in here has to be sort of named what type of body it should be. So for example, this ground plane should be a static body. Now the reason why is because a static body doesn't move and it doesn't do anything. Therefore the ground plane would make sense. It would be a static body. it doesn't move, but things still collide onto it. So we'll set, first of all, you want to disable dynamics. So turn that off, because if you keep it on, it'll have to calculate every single change you make, and that takes a long time. So set it as a static body, so it won't move, it won't fall or anything like that, but it will react with everything else around it. Now, this here is not a kinematic body, and it's not a rigid body or a deforming body. This is considered a parts body because it's in multiple parts. So if we click on that, we now set this as a multiple parts body. Now, if we were to go into item properties, which is just our little panel for bullet dynamics, we can enable dynamics, which is another way of clicking on this. And then what we do is we can play through, and you'll see that it just collapses into pieces. It's not textured on the inside because I'm a little bit of a twat, and I forgot that I basically just created a new object. It doesn't really matter, I guess, but when you basically what you want to do really is you want to, if you want it to be textured, the easiest way to do it is to explode it into parts when you fracture in Modeler, and I guess you could texture it that way. It's just because I created a new object, its insides weren't textured. We can ignore that for now. I mean, it's not a big deal. I'm just saying. The texture was only really there to show you that a UV map doesn't deform its texture whenever it moves. So by default, it'll just sort of kind of fall to pieces. And the reason why is because currently it's colliding with our ground plane, which is not something you want, really. And the reason why is because, well, it's constantly colliding with that ground plane. And you can even see, where is it? I'm looking for it. I'm actually kind of happy about this because sometimes you have errors and there's like floating bits in it, and if you get that, there are tutorials out there for removing those, and I'll probably make one myself sooner or later. But you can see here in the bottom right, we actually have a few pieces, or a piece at least, that's sticking into the ground plane, and that's not a big deal, especially if you're gonna have particles in like fire and smoke and stuff. That's not really a big deal, but it's just a bit of a nuisance. So since this just kind of falls to pieces, well, that's not exactly good. So instead, we're gonna set it to start sleeping. Well, what does that do? Yeah, a whole lot of nothing. The reason why is because it's currently sleeping. It is colliding with this ground plane, but it's not considering it as a collision. It's considering it as a resting. So until something that is a kinematic body forces its way into it, it's not going to consider anything an actual collision. So now what we can do is under setup, I believe, maybe not setup, items, we can create a null, and let's call this collision. And what a null is basically nothing, but a null can be used for different properties. So that's the benefit of having a null. So if we go into here and we click on P for properties, oh wait, no, it's because it considers it's an object, right? Oh geez, I don't remember how to handle nulls anymore. It's been too long. I'm pretty sure I misspelled collision too. Oh well. I don't really care. No, that might work, I guess. What we can do is under effects tools, we can take this null and set it as a, oh, I've got auto key set, which is a bit of a nuisance. Under here, we're going to disable dynamics so that we don't have to load every keyframe. And what we're going to do is we're going to move it up, say 1.5 seconds. No, it's going to have to be faster than that. Let's say half a second. through our object so that it doesn't take very long. It's going to go, yeah. And we're going to set it as a kinematic body. So kinematic body can react with a parts body, and it can move. A static body cannot move, and a rigid body, I believe, generally doesn't move, and neither does a parts body. You can't move a parts body, which can make some things a bit complicated, but don't worry about it. There's ways around stuff like that. So we're going to enable it, and we're going to play. Woo! Boy, that hit it hard. All right. So that really sent that stuff flying, didn't it? Great. That's awesome. So don't scroll through too fast, otherwise your computer will slow down because it has to calculate all the physics and whatnot. That was a nice strong hit right there. Wow. Let's see what we have. So let's go under item properties here, and we don't have to. We're gonna want to slow it down a little bit. Let's make it. If we have all these options here, and it'll take me forever to go through all these options. So what I suggest to you guys is simply step through and look at these options one at a time. You know, like take this one, friction, increase it to like 1,000 and see what happens. And then, you know, once you find out what it does, decrease it back to 50, then take bounciness, increase that to like 1,000, and then find out what that does. I mean, these two are pretty these two are pretty you know, easy to figure out. Friction is how much friction does this body here have against any other bodies it reacts with. So if we have 100% friction, then it'll be very difficult for things to slide around on it. Bounciness obviously changes how much it'll bounce when it hits the ground or anything like that. Glue strength is how much is it stuck together. So if we increase this to 100%, even the collision might not even break it apart. Oh, it did, but it makes it more difficult for it to break apart. That's all that does. Now, same with braking angle. If you change the braking angle, you can make it more difficult for it to break apart, which is always nice. So we have it on start sleeping. So what that means is basically once something touches it, it will activate. Another thing you could do is always active, which will just set it always active, just no matter what. Start active is only if something touches it, basically. But active on last key, this is an interesting one because this one allows you to change things up as well. So this is the last key of this object. So if we play through, you'll notice that nothing will happen. Oh wait, well, no, why? Well, I suppose it would still work. Well, yeah, it would, yeah. Sorry, my apologies on that. You'll notice actually. Did that? I thought a piece fell through. No, I guess I was just seeing things. But this is pretty nice, actually. I kind of like that. That's awesome. My apologies, but activate on last key will generally activate this cube on the last. Oh yes, because the 0 here is the last key. So if I set this to 1, then the last key is. Sorry, I have to, because I'm not disabling dynamics before I make changes. It has to calculate things, because you'll see that it's gone through and it's done nothing, and the reason why is because it only activates the cube on the very last key that it is set to. So if I set it to 1, it won't do anything because the null has already passed through it. But if I set it to 0, then the last key is 0. So it's already active right at the beginning. So we're just going to start sleeping because that sort of makes sense. Now it kind of goes flying straight up way too fast. You can increase the strength of the gravity if you want. by reducing this number, obviously. By default, it's set to real world dynamics, so real life gravity is negative 9.81 meters per second. But you know, you don't have to be real. We can change it, and we can set it to something else like negative 21, and that'll just force it to not fly up into the air like it's weightless. So if we click play and let it calculate through, see, that's a lot better right there. That's really nice, actually. Now you see we have a bit of a glitching issue here. We have a floating bit. Now that's a bit of a weird issue. I've never seen that issue before personally, because you can see that it's reacting with stuff. It's just not reacting with our ground plane properly, and I think I might know why. The pivot point, which is sort of where things react. What's that? Oh yeah, that's my null. My apologies. The pivot point, which is where things sort of start to react with things, is in the center instead of at the center of the actual ground plane. So let's click on modify, and let's see if we can move pivot. There it is. And let's actually bring that to roughly the surface and see if that helps solve the issue. It might not. I'm not sure. Go away, Delta Nova. Don't even know who you are. No, we're still getting weird objects that are somehow floating. Obviously, we can solve that if we play around with the gravity a bit more, see what we can get. Or if we play around with a few things, we can try and change it up, see if we can change how it's reacting. We can let's go through here. We can increase its density, which is basically its weight. So let's increase that a bit, see if we can keep it from making it look weird. Let's increase its friction so it doesn't move around or slide around too much. We can increase its glue strength just a little bit. Let's go to 40%. Now its shape is set to mesh. You can change its shape. We can set it to a box, which is what it technically is, or we can change it to a sphere. A sphere or a cylinder would be a bad idea for this because of the shape it currently is. So I would recommend either box or mesh for this specifically. But you know, box might work better because it's shaped as a box. We're still getting these floating bits, which is a bit of a nuisance here. I don't like that. Let's lower this down and see what we get if we play through again. Jeez, I wonder how that like why that's happening. There's got to be a reason. I'm sure there is. Like, I mean, I'm not perfect at doing all this stuff here. I can't be personally. It's probably because of this. So let's reduce that just a little bit. Let's go to 11. Yeah, 11. That should work. Let's recalculate. Come on, baby. Crap. That made it even worse. Okay, let's increase that a lot then. See what we get if we just boost it for some reason. Go away. Gah! Come on, there we go. Just a little bit annoying, that's all. I've never really dealt with that before. I haven't seen that before. Where like I've seen floating, like glitchy bits, like just like almost like just like one's like two-dimensional polygons that are floating, and that's caused by the fracture because there's slight issues in the fracture. But I've never seen entire chunks just float, which is unusual. That's for sure. Let's go back to 9.81, which is real life gravity acceleration. 9.81 meters per second. And let's, maybe it's friction. Friction might be causing it to have a bit of an issue with that, so let's lower that down. See, it floats back up because of the gravity. You have to play around with it. You really have to. There we go. It kind of floated around a bit. I think that's weird. It's like it's touching the original location of it, but it's not, because it's slightly above where the original location was. I've never quite seen that before. That's interesting. Personally, I've just never seen that before. Let's see about increasing the glue strength. See if that might help. We basically want to take it and try and... God, why is it doing that? I'm sorry, that's so weird. I've never seen that before. Never even encountered that sort of issue before. You know what? Let's adjust this thing's path, and let's actually come at the why isn't it moving? Okay, let's disable dynamics, bring this up, and let's bring this here. Weird, I've got auto key on, but it's not. So I'm going to do this. I don't know what's going on right now. It's kind of glitching out on me. I've never had this type of issue before. There we go. That's more like it. And what we do is we go roughly halfway, and we're going to actually arc it. So what happens is it's not going to hit it from a direct angle, or I mean from a yeah, like a straight angle. It's going to hit it. It's going to hit it from like a from a different type of angle. So it's going to sort of explode slightly to the side. And what we're going to do, we're actually going to have it even explode more to the side. Let's have it. What sounds good? Kind of leaning towards. Let's explode it sort of that way a bit more. Now if you reset back to zero, enable dynamics, and play this through, and it's broken. Cool. Start sleeping, collision set to start active. It's a kinematic. Dynamics are enabled. That's set to start active, and it's a static. Should be working. Glue strength we can turn back down. There are a lot of things in LightWave that can kind of break easy, and it's a huge, it's like sad to see it break easy, but that's just sort of life. That's what you have to survive with. Parts body, kinematic, static, enable and disable, play. Wow, it's just not working at all anymore. But you saw what was capable of it. You saw like how to do it basically, and you just play around with it until you get what you want. And I hope you guys enjoyed the Let's Play so far. Please do tune in for more, or Let's Play tutorial. Please do tune in for more, and if you have any more questions on anything, I'll see what I can find out. And hope you guys have enjoyed this so far. And bye.